for generations, the Book of Job, it's been seen as this powerful story, right? But often, I think, deeply misunderstood. Many of us probably heard it growing up as, some kind of divine test, or maybe about punishment, or Job just not being worthy. But what if? What if that whole narrative we know is, well, just wrong? Or at least surface reading. What if the real message is something else entirely, something deeper, and maybe incredibly relevant to your own inner life? Today, we're doing Deep Dive. We're exploring Dr. Roy E. Richmond's really groundbreaking metaphysical commentary on the first 3 chapters of Job. Our mission really is to uncover this completely different way of looking at it. It reveals Job is more of a sacred blueprint for awakening. Dr. Roy's work, it challenges pretty much everything you thought you knew. It treats these biblical stories not as literal history, but as profound allegories. About us, about our inner experience.
That's exactly it. You hit the nail on the head. This isn't a story about suffering to, earn points with some god out there. Dr. Roy really reveals it as the sacred journey, an awakening to who you truly are. It's about dismantling all those inherited religious lies, the stuff we pick up specifically for your own sacred self. And that term, sacred self, Dr. Roy uses it to mean that pure, inherent part of you, untouched by conditioning, by false beliefs. It's your true spiritual identity, you see. Not the ego, not the flaws we think we have. And what people often called God's wrath, well, Dr. Roy says that's actually love. Love longing to restore our own deep awareness.
Wow. That immediately it changes the whole picture, doesn't it? Okay, let's unpack this core idea a bit more. How does Dr. Roy's study, looking at the Hebrew, the symbolism, the allegory, how does that transform how we see Job?
It's completely transformative. Because he explains that Job pictures every single person's inner journey, from confusion, from not knowing to clarity. And the central revelation, maybe the biggest one, is the accuser, often called Satan, right? Dr. Roy says it's not some external devil at all. It's the voice of mistaken identity within us.
Ah, okay.
Think of it like that inner critic, that voice of self-doubt or those really deep-seated beliefs telling you you're not good enough or you messed up, now you're being punished. Father or Spirit never condemned Job. That condemnation came from religion, from dogma, from inherited ideas. And the comforter that Job cried out for, that's the voice within us all calling us back. So there's no test, not in the way we usually think of it. It's just uncovering truth that's already there. The whole thing is a parable of awakening, not just, lose everything, get it back plus some.
That's such a powerful distinction. It really does challenge a common view because for so many, Job is almost a stand-in for Jesus, right?
Right.
Suffering for humanity. How does Dr. Roy address that?
Right. And Dr. Roy is quite clear on this. He asserts Job is not a picture of Jesus. Jesus, he says, always lived from this full, complete, unwavering awareness of his union with Father. He never forgot where he came from, spiritually speaking. Job, though, Job represents the sacred self before it remembers its origin.
Before the awakening.
Exactly. And the journey we all take, in a sense, to realize that inherent divine connection. And, the name Job itself, Ayav in Hebrew, the root meanings are really interesting. Things like persecuted, hated, even turned, repented, and returning. But these aren't literal actions Job takes. They're spiritual states. Allegorical. Job symbolizes that pure inner self, but it's under accusation, not from spirit, no. It's accused by what Dr. Roy calls inherited consequences thinking.
Inherited consequences thinking. What exactly does that mean?
It's that ingrained belief system, often from society or religion, that says suffering is always a direct result of something you did wrong, or maybe even something your ancestors did, that cause and effect punishment model. Instead of seeing challenges as maybe, an internal process, an awakening, purification, it's about that inner conflict when the sacred self has sort of forgotten its union with the divine mind.
Okay, I see. So connecting this directly to you, listening right now, Job, metaphysically, represents your own inner consciousness. It's pure deep down, but often kind of veiled, right? By confusion, by wrong ideas, maybe caught in systems that blame God for trouble and see consequences of judgment. This story, it's really for anyone who's ever looked at their life, their struggles, and just asked why. Why is this happening to me? It's an invitation to see that why in a totally new way. Okay, let's dive into chapter 1 then. How does Dr. Roy show every character, every event, as a key to unlock our spiritual memory? He says this chapter is an allegory, a journey from, surface righteousness, doing the right things, into the real depths of divine awareness.
Absolutely. Every name, every place, it's a signpost pointing inward. It's a map. Job himself, like we said, is the sacred self. But he's being falsely accused right now by that egoic way of thinking, that inherited consequences stuff. He is righteous in his being, but he's just not fully aware yet of his eternal union. And experience is drawing him back into that awareness. Then there's Uz, That's not some country on a map.
Right.
It's a realm within our awareness. It represents contemplation, inner questioning, that place inside where divine thought, pure spiritual understanding kind of wrestles with carnal perception, our everyday, limited human way of seeing things. And Job's three friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, they are so insightful in Dr. Roy's interpretation. They really embody those internal voices, the old ways of thinking we all wrestle with. Eliphaz the Temanite, he represents natural intellect, logic, what Dr. Roy calls the southward pull, that tendency we have to try and figure out spiritual stuff using just a rational, carnal mind.
Trying to reason it all out.
Yes, exactly. Then Bildad, the Shuhite, he pictures inherited doctrines, traditions, ideas passed down that might even sound loving, but they're actually rooted in fear, guilt, shame. It's legalistic thinking, rules over relationship. And Zophar, the Namathite, he symbolizes rash assumptions, jumping to conclusions, shallow interpretations. He's like that part of us that wants quick answers but doesn't have real spiritual depth, even if it sounds, pleasant or convincing on the surface.
It's fascinating how they're not just guys Job is talking to, but parts of our inner dialogue, trying to explain spiritual shifts through the old lens of suffering, trying to appease God. And then there's Satan in this chapter. How does that fit in?
Yeah, the interpretation of Satan here is absolutely crucial. It's not some external evil being plotting against Job. Instead, Dr. Roy says it represents the accusatory voice within. Our own carnal awareness, our human-level thinking, that resists divine truth. It points out all our supposed flaws. It comes from that feeling of separation, from mistaken identity. It acts like a prosecuting attorney inside, challenging our inherent goodness, our connection. It's that inner critic whispering, see? You're not really who Father says you are.
Okay. And the adversaries and losses Job faces.
Yeah.
The Sabians, the Chaldeans losing his children.
Yeah.
These aren't just literal disasters, are they?
No, not at all in this allegorical view. They're keys to understanding inner processes. The Sabians, for instance, represent confusion, deception. False covenants may be inner agreements we've made with limiting ideas, thoughts that just rob us of peace and clarity. And the Chaldeans, they symbolize mystical false teachings, predictions based on fear, religious superstitions, things that keep the sacred self feeling trapped and afraid.
And the children. 7 sons, 3 daughters.
Right. When Job's 7 sons are lost, it represents a temporary stripping away of what Dr. Roy calls the 7 masculine faculties of initiating thought. Things like faith understood as spiritual perception, strength as inner stability, understanding as spiritual intelligence, will as divine direction, imagination as spiritual vision, judgment as true discernment, and power as our voice and expression. Their loss isn't punishment. It means awareness is being cleared out, stripped back, but for improvement, for a deeper restoration.
Okay.
And the 3 daughters, they represent the feminine triad of sacred faculties, intuitive receptivity, the movement of spirit within us, and divine love. Their loss symbolizes a temporary eclipse of that spiritual sensitivity, a necessary quiet time before something new can unfold.
It's like a clearing away.
Precisely. And the numbers themselves are symbolic, too. 7 is divine completeness, spiritual perfection. 3 is divine fullness, resurrection, unfolding. 1,000 signifies fullness in the natural realm, like inner abundance. 500 points to spirit's movement, the extension of grace, even smaller things. Oxen symbolize strength in our natural understanding. Sheep are docile thoughts, a yielded awareness. The servants are our inner faculties, our perceptions, and the fire of God. Dr. Roy insists this is always about purification of our conscious awareness, never destruction. And the east wind often signifies spiritual correction, blowing in new beginnings, clearing away the old dust.
So pulling it all together for Chapter 1, what's the biggest takeaway from Dr. Roy's view? How does it really reframe things?
Well, Chapter 1, through all this rich allegory, powerfully points us towards spiritual restoration. The biggest thing, I think, is that it shows that awareness, our inner state of knowing, is what needs correction and refinement. Not our behavior, not our actions primarily. It's about remembering who you truly are at the core, rather than trying to earn worthiness through doing things.
Right. And that leads us into Chapter 2, where he says, again, there was a day. Dr. Roy explains this isn't just Tuesday following Monday, right? It's a spiritual event. A new cycle of inner examination, where the sons of God, our spiritual thoughts, gather before divine law. But the adversary, that inner Satan, the inherited false ideas, rises up again. This really sets the stage for awareness in crisis.
Exactly. And the nature of Satan in chapter 2 just continues this theme. It is that accuser consciousness. It arises from those inherited beliefs, the law-based doctrines, the fear-driven perceptions we've absorbed. It's that nagging internal question that keeps bubbling up. Are you really who Father says you are? It's that self-doubt that kicks in when our awareness is still caught up in externalism and what the world or old teachings have told us about ourselves.
And Job's integrity, that word means wholeness, completeness. That's key here, isn't it? It's like his hidden awareness of union with Father. It's still there, deep down, despite all the chaos on the surface. It feels less like Father testing Job and more like revealing Job to Job, inviting that sacred self to rise above how things look, to affirm that deep inner truth.
Beautifully put. And then Job's physical suffering becomes deeply allegorical in this light. When the text says skin for skin, Dr. Roy sees that representing our tendency to define life just by the surface stuff. The material world, our bodies, rather than the inner life of spirit. And the boils covering him, from foot to crown. Think of those as the outward symptoms of deeply held toxic beliefs. They're manifesting as spiritual inflammation. It's a result of that inner conflict between what we've been taught, maybe religiously, and what spirit actually knows deep inside.
So the physical mirrors the internal turmoil.
Absolutely. And when Job grabs a potsherd, a piece of broken pottery, to scrape himself and sits among the ashes, Dr. Roy sees that symbolizing fragmented understanding, trying to heal using broken, incomplete theology, dwelling in shame, maybe, or grief under that old law-based idea of repentance. But crucially, even in that raw, painful state, the sacred self remains untouched. It's still pure, still whole, ready to rise above it all.
Wow. Then there's Job's wife. Her role is intense.
Yes. She symbolizes, in this view, the voice of outer emotion, a reactive faculty that sees everything through fear and suffering. Her plea, curse God and die, isn't about literal death. It's an urging to just cut off spiritual awareness completely. Give up. Fall into spiritual amnesia, basically.
And Job's resistance is vital.
Absolutely crucial. He refuses. He holds on to that integrity, that inner knowing, however faint it might seem at that moment.
And then his friends arrive.
Yeah.
And they just sit there in silence for 7 days and 7 nights. That's quite a scene.
It really is. And that silence is profound. It's not just awkwardness. It reflects a full cycle of unknowing, a necessary sacred pause before a deeper truth can even begin to emerge. Their silence is important because at that level, with their old understanding, they can't perceive the truth of what's happening. They can't offer real comfort or insight yet. It prepares Job for an awakening where spirit itself will speak beyond those old voices, beyond tradition, trying to explain everything through suffering.
So connecting this back again to you, the listener, this chapter really shows the sacred self being challenged. By every voice imaginable, inherited thinking, external religion, shame, suffering, yet somehow it holds fast to its integrity. The trial isn't punishment. It's more like a spiritual womb, restructuring everything, leading towards a resurrection of awareness. It's pressing away all the stuff that was never really true about you in the first place.
Okay.
Let's delve into chapter 3. Dr. Roy calls this the cry of the unawakened awareness. Job opened his mouth and cursed his day. This isn't literal cursing, is it?
No, not in the way we think of cursing someone. It's the sacred self finally voicing its deepest inner torment. It's exposing the raw suffering caused by those inherited false beliefs he's been operating under.
So when he curses his day, wanting to perish from the day I was born, what's that really about?
Dr. Roy unpacks this beautifully. He says it refers to the moment a sacred self, or humanity collectively, awakens into self-awareness, but without spiritual memory, without remembering its source. It's like descending into what he calls dust awareness, that state where you perceive yourself as separate from source, just physical matter. It's the lament of humanity having forgotten its divine origin. It's this profound longing to return to that awareness of, I exist in Father and Father in me. It's that deep, almost primal spiritual homesickness we can all feel sometimes.
And the imagery of darkness and night he uses?
Incredibly powerful symbolism. They represent the absence of spiritual understanding, obscurity, times when that clear, pure voice of spirit feels drowned out, muffled. Job's lament, in a way, is expressing this raw desire that the veil of ignorance, this sense of separation, would just never have existed in the first place.
And there are other allegories in his lament too, right?
Yes, plenty. The solitary night, he mentions. That means a barren awareness. Empty. Void of revelation, void of joy. Them that curse the day. Those are the voices in our own lower awareness. Voices formed by religiosity, condemnation, fear, those internal patterns that constantly accuse and find fault. The stars of the twilight. Those symbolized dimly lit thoughts. Fleeting hopes. He's expressing the despair of losing even the hope of understanding, and the womb that represents origin, potential. So when Job asks, why died I not from the womb? It's not really a death wish. It's a cry for freedom from false perception, freedom from this unawakened existence he finds himself in.
So what this means for us is that Job is longing for rest, isn't he? But it's not just sleep or an end to suffering.
Exactly. It's a profound return to the awareness of union with Father. That place where striving stops, where fear doesn't exist anymore. But the tragedy is he can't quite see it yet. Those deeply ingrained inherited beliefs are still veiling that truth from him. He's searching outwardly or lamenting outwardly for something that's actually already within him.
And he mentions kings, princes, and counselors who built desolate places for themselves.
Yes, Dr. Roy sees those as symbolizing egoic thoughts, worldly wisdom. They might look powerful, have external riches, but they leave one spiritually poor without that inner divine awareness. The wicked he talks about aren't necessarily evil people, but restless false thoughts, oppressive ideas that create inner turmoil. And the prisoners are those caught in mental bondage by these very ideas. All of them, the kings, the wicked, the prisoners, they're all longing for that inner rest, rest from false identity. And again, this rest Dr. Roy talks about is an internal state of being, not somewhere you go.
Job also feels hedged in. That sounds negative, like being trapped.
It can sound that way, but Dr. Roy interprets hedged here as covered, protected, or fenced. It's not punishment. It's more like a veil that's waiting to be lifted, a temporary boundary that's actually preserving him before profound expansion of awareness. His suffering, his lament, it's the inward cry of every sacred self that hasn't yet awakened fully to its divine nature. It's a sacred unraveling process. So chapter 3 ultimately reveals this sacred lament of awakening. It's that deep, deep longing to return to what Dr. Roy calls a single-eye view.
A single-eye view.
Yeah, a state of pure, unified awareness, where there's no inner darkness, no mourning, no feeling like a prisoner, no guilt, only light, life, and conscious union. It's the yearning for your true home, which is already right where you are, within.
Okay, so let's try and recap this incredibly profound deep dive.
Yeah.
The Book of Job, seen through these spiritual, metaphysical eyes. It's not a trial, it's a transformation. It's the journey of the sacred self, your sacred self, moving from confusion and mistaken identity to clarity, from being veiled in awareness to realizing full conscious union with the divine mind.
Exactly. And this whole perspective, it shifts how we see pain, doesn't it? It's not punishment. It's more like the pressing away of everything that was never really true about us in the first place. It reveals that the rest Job was desperately longing for and the light, life, and union he sought, they aren't goals out there somewhere that you have to achieve or earn. They are inherent states. Already present within your sacred self, they are yours to discover right now.
Wow. So here's a final thought, maybe something for you to mull over. Consider the veils in your own life. What are the inherited beliefs, maybe? The societal expectations you've absorbed, the external perceptions you hold about yourself, things that might be obscuring your own inner awareness of union with the divine. How might seeing your own challenges, your own job moments, not as a test of endurance, but as a sacred unraveling? How might that fundamentally transform your journey and maybe reveal the peace, the light, the union that you've been seeking all along?